In this clip, Joe Rogan reveals a chilling CIA experiment and its link to the Unabomber.
With China, I read something where they can they're trying to grow babies in an artificial womb now.
Mm-hmm. See, that's where ethics gets a little weird, because then you're playing God. Then
there's something that happens. There's communication between the mother and the child through the entire time. So are you giving birth to a fucking sociopath?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because this baby is not going to get any love, no oxytocin. There's nothing from the mother. There's no bond with the mother. When the mother's stressed, the baby feels stressed.
Some of the mother's brain, something from their brain goes into the baby.
100%. There's a lot going. There's communication. This is why the mother has to be up on her nutrients, because the baby's taking nutrients from the mother, and if the mother doesn't have enough, the baby is taking it from the mother. An artificial womb is you're opening the door for Satan.
Yeah,
if you believe in that, if you want a soulless, bizarrely unempathetic person, what better way than
Maybe that's
have
where
no connection? That was one of the things that happened to the Unabomber.
The Unabomber was Theodore Ted Kaczynski, an American domestic terrorist and former Harvard math prodigy. From 1978 to 1995, he mailed bombs to universities and airlines, killing 3 people and injuring 23 others. He was driven by a deep hatred of modern technology and industrial society.
The Unabomber, I watched the Netflix documentary on him, and one of the things that happened to him when he was young, he had some sort of a disease where he had to be separated from his mom, and they put him in a hospital with no contact.
At 6 months old, Ted suffered a severe allergic reaction and had to be hospitalized. Back then, hospital rules kept parents away, so he was separated from his mom and dad for several weeks. When he came home, family members noticed a change. The baby had become quieter, more withdrawn, less responsive. Experts say that kind of early trauma can seriously disrupt attachment, the core bond between parent and child. For Ted, it was probably a critical crack in the foundation, one that later helped shape his extreme and deadly worldview.
For a prolonged period of time, as a baby, no one picked him up, no one held him, no nothing, for a long, long time. And then, as if that wasn't fucked up enough, they entered him into the Harvard LSD studies.
When Ted was in college at Harvard, he got pulled into a strange and secret experiment. The researchers were testing how powerful drugs like LSD could affect the mind. Ted, a brilliant but shy student, was dosed with LSD and then subjected to harsh confrontational interviews designed to break someone down mentally. He wasn't told the full purpose of what was happening. The experience was intense. A mix of chemical trips and psychological attacks, confusing and sometimes terrifying. Many people who knew him later said these experiments left a mark. They believed it added to his feelings of isolation and distrust, and may have shaped how he thought about people, society, and control.
Oh, and then so he was in the Harvard LSD studies. This is during the MK Ultra period. So the MK Ultra period, they were doing all sorts of experiments with people through the CIA. One of the things they were doing was a thing called Operation Midnight Climax, where they opened up brothels in San Francisco, and they would put two-way mirrors in, and they would dose these Johns up with LSD. So the ladies of the night were actually working for the CIA, and they would go in, here, have a drink. And the guy would have a drink, and then next thing you know, he's like, whoa.
Wow.
And they were just trying to experiment and see. This was also a part of what the Charles Manson family was about, and they were doing all kinds of shit with people where they're trying to figure out what can we do to humans if we can manipulate them with LSD, and they did it to Kaczynski. And we saw what happened with him.
There's a conspiracy theory floating around that Ted Kaczynski was broken or even programmed at Harvard as part of CIA mind control research, similar to MK Ultra. People point to a few things. Henry Murray, a Harvard psychologist who ran controversial experiments testing how far students could be pushed mentally, had ties to wartime intelligence and interrogation research. The experiments took place between 1959 and 1962, around the same time as MK Ultra's peak, and Ted was young, brilliant, and considered a perfect test subject. However, no declassified CIA documents link him directly to MK Ultra. The Harvard study was officially run by Murray's psychology department, not the CIA. There's no proof Ted was instructed or trained to commit bombings. The experiments themselves involved harsh stress, humiliation, and sometimes LSD, and they certainly affected the students' psyches, including Ted's. Many people note that the techniques Murray used look strikingly similar to the ones in MK Ultra, even if there's no official connection.
And Tuskegee, Alabama, with the syphilis back in the day.
Well, that was even more evil.
Where
and that
they were
that
just
was
seeing
different.
what would kind of happen.
Yeah.
Well, it's still like human experimenting without them knowing.
Yes.
It's a very scary situation.
In Tuskegee, Alabama, starting in 1932, the U.S. government ran a secret experiment on black men with syphilis. They weren't told they were sick, and even when a cure, penicillin, became available in the 1940s, the men weren't treated. For 40 years, doctors watched the disease slowly destroy their bodies, while the men and their families suffered, unaware they were part of an experiment. The study finally ended in 1972, after a whistleblower exposed it to the public. The revelation of the Tuskegee study didn't just cause outrage, it shattered trust in the medical system, particularly among Black Americans. Even decades later, the study is cited as a reason for distrust in doctors, hospitals, and government health programs.
Well, it just goes back to what we were talking about with medicine, that there are people that are willing to do things to people that are just entirely evil, for profit, for whatever justification they can come up with.
No value for human life.
None.
Joe's right. You don't have to look far to see medicine being twisted for profit. Look at the opioid epidemic. Back in the late 1990s, a company called Purdue Pharma rolled out OxyContin, a powerful painkiller. They told doctors it was safe, barely addictive, and a miracle for pain. Sales reps handed out free samples, bonuses, even trips to convince doctors to prescribe it for everything from backaches to dental surgery. But it was all a lie. Behind the scenes, they knew it was highly addictive. What followed was a tidal wave of addiction across America. Families destroyed, entire towns gutted by overdose deaths, while Purdue made billions. Sackler family, who owned Purdue, became one of the richest families in the world off this drug. Museums, universities, even hospitals carried their name in big shiny letters, all while people on the street were dying from the very pills they pushed. Eventually, the lawsuits came, and Purdue declared bankruptcy, but the damage was already done. Hundreds of thousands of lives lost to an epidemic born out of corporate greed. And sadly, that wasn't the only time medicine crossed the line. You don't even have to stay in America to see it. Around the same time, halfway across the world, another pharmaceutical giant was running its own deadly experiment. In 1996, a deadly meningitis epidemic struck Kano, Nigeria. Children were dying fast. Panic and desperation were everywhere. Into this crisis came the pharmaceutical giant Pfizer. They brought an experimental antibiotic called Trovan. Trovan had never been properly tested on children. It wasn't approved for their use anywhere in the world. Still, Pfizer began a clinical trial on about 200 sick children. Some got the new drug. The others received the standard medicine, but allegedly at a much lower, less effective dose. Critics argued this was done to make Trovan look better by comparison. Families were often not told their children were part of an experiment. They were desperate and simply trusted they were getting the best care. The results were tragic. 11 children died. Dozens more were left with permanent, devastating injuries, deafness, brain damage, disabilities that changed their lives forever. For Pfizer, it was a shortcut to data they could never have gotten in the US or Europe. For the families, it was a betrayal. Their children weren't treated. They were used as human guinea pigs. Years of lawsuits followed. Eventually, Pfizer agreed to an out-of-court settlement worth $75 million with the Nigerian government and the victims' families. The Kano trial remains one of the darkest chapters in modern medical history, a reminder of what happens when profit and power take precedence over human life. Thanks for watching. I'd love to hear what you think, and if you enjoyed it, a like and subscribe would be awesome.